She had done everything right. She had ended the relationship. She had called the police. She had warned her colleagues. She had looked her boss in the eye and said, "If he ever comes through that door, call 999 immediately." On the afternoon of the 18th of February 2014, the police were already on their way. They just weren't fast enough. In a busy hair salon on a Tuesday evening in Gloucester, England, a 20-year-old hairdresser named Hollie Gazzard was stabbed 14 times by her ex-boyfriend in front of her colleagues, in front of her customers, in front of the street. She had seen it coming. She had reported him, and it still happened. This is the story of Hollie Gazzard, her life, her dreams, her smile, and the pattern of abuse that took everything from her. And it is the story of what was missed, what was ignored, and what her family refused to let be forgotten. Hollie Gazzard was born on the 23rd of July 1993 in Gloucester, a cathedral city in the west of England. She was the younger of two daughters in a close, affectionate family. Her parents, Nick and Mandy Gazzard, and her older sister, Chloe, shaped a home full of warmth and energy, and Hollie filled it with personality. As a child, Hollie threw herself into everything: sport, social clubs, after-school adventures. She was the kind of kid who showed up fully, loudly, and with a grin. Her father, Nick, a former professional footballer who had moved into financial services after an injury ended his playing career, shared his love of Manchester United with her. They went to Old Trafford together. They laughed together. She was his girl. But as she grew into her teens, something clicked. Hollie discovered hairdressing, and she was good at it, better than good. She had the hands for it, the eye for colour and shape, and above all, she had the personality for a salon floor. She made people feel seen. She made them feel better. Her hair was never the same colour twice. New cuts, new colours, new styles. For Hollie, hair wasn't just a job, it was a form of expression. A statement about who she was that changed constantly because she was always becoming more. By the time she was 19, Hollie had secured a place at Steiner Training Academy in London to develop her career further. She also applied to work as a hairdresser on a cruise ship travelling the Bahamas. The idea of travelling the world while doing the things she loved was exactly the kind of ambition that matched her energy. Her family watched her grow and felt nothing but pride. What none of them could see was that someone was about to enter Hollie's life and slowly begin to take it apart. In January 2013, while working part-time at a local wine bar called Zest in Gloucester, Hollie met a 21-year-old man named Asher Maslin. He was handsome and talkative, a former security guard from Cheltenham with a confident, chatty manner. He asked her out repeatedly, almost persistently, until she finally agreed. In those first weeks, he seemed acceptable, polite. Nick Gazzard later said he gave him the benefit of the doubt. Even Hollie's mother, who had known Maslin as a troublemaker from her days as a dinner lady at his school, pushed her concerns aside. Because Hollie was happy, and that is exactly how coercive control always starts. The warning signs came early, subtly at first. Maslin began calling and texting Hollie constantly. When she was out with her family, he would message her repeatedly. When she was with friends, he would call until she picked up. It was easy at first to read it as affection. As someone who simply couldn't get enough of her, but it wasn't affection, it was a leash. In March 2013, Hollie set off for her 9-month placement on a cruise ship. She was counting down the days. She was finally living one of her dreams. Only 1 week in, she called her father and asked to come home. Her family were confused. This had been everything she worked toward. But in hindsight, what became clear was this: Maslin had been bombarding her with calls and messages while she was at sea. He had seen her photographs on social media, pictures of her smiling and enjoying herself without him, and he had made her pay for it. He essentially forced her to abandon her dream and come back. Back in Gloucester, the control intensified. When Hollie went out with friends, Maslin showed up. When her parents came to visit her in London and took her out for lunch, Maslin was on the phone telling her not to let her family take her away from him. He moved in with her. He followed her everywhere. He became a constant presence she could not escape. Her friends watched her change. The Hollie who had been loud and confident and full of laughter became quieter around him, more guarded, more careful. As one person close to her described it, it was like he had chipped away at her until she just wasn't herself anymore. In May 2013, during a family birthday meal in Gloucester, Maslin arrived already drunk. He humiliated Hollie in front of her family. He spoke to her in a way her father described as treating her like dirt. He was rude to the restaurant staff. He was aggressive and controlling throughout the evening. They tried to speak to her about what they were seeing, but Hollie, strong and independent and deeply ashamed, told them she could handle it. Then came August 2013. Hollie and Maslin attended the Notting Hill Carnival in London. During the event, Maslin lost sight of Hollie briefly in the crowd. When he found her, he erupted. In the middle of one of the busiest public events in London, he grabbed her by the throat and physically attacked her. Hollie was shocked. She had known he was controlling. She had not believed he would ever actually lay hands on her. She packed her things, called her father, and moved back to Gloucester. Back home, she found work at Fringe Benefits and La Bella Beauty, a hair salon in Gloucester city centre, and very slowly she began to find herself again. She was popular with her colleagues. She was brilliant with her clients. Her energy, the real Hollie energy, began to return. But Maslin had also come back to Gloucester. He followed her. He pursued her. He told her he had changed. He bought her gifts. He bombarded her with calls and messages until she eventually agreed to try again. Almost immediately, the control resumed. He showed up at her house at unreasonable hours. He called and texted non-stop. He followed her to work. The abuse, which had been physical before, began to deepen and darken. By Christmas 2013, Hollie had made her decision. She was done. She attempted to end the relationship multiple times over the following weeks. Maslin refused to accept it. He did not experience Hollie ending the relationship as something that was her choice to make. He experienced it as something being taken from him, something he owned. On Valentine's Day 2014, Hollie chose a public place for the final breakup. She was afraid what he might do. She thought the presence of other people might protect her. She told him it was over. He erupted. He threw a drink in her face. He followed her to her car, jumped in the passenger seat, grabbed the handbrake, and stopped her from leaving. He told her directly, "If you leave me, I will kill you. I will kill all of your family." He then took her bank card from her bag and used it to withdraw £300 from her account. The following day, Hollie went to the police. She did not go quietly or reluctantly. She went with her parents. She gave a detailed statement. She described the threats, the acid he had threatened to throw in her face, the threats against her father with a baseball bat, the theft, the violence, the constant contact. She was brave enough to ask for help. The police listened. They went to Maslin's mother's address. He wasn't there. They were given alternative addresses. They did not visit them. They did not find him. The case was processed largely as a theft report. What the officers did not do, according to the Independent Police Complaints Commission investigation that followed Hollie's death, was connect the dots. The theft, the threats, the previous strangulation captured on CCTV in Gloucester city centre, the constant contact, the fear, and the documented prior violence were not assessed together as a picture of a man on a dangerous escalating path. Hollie was sent home without a meaningful safety plan. Maslin was still free. He had 3 days. After Hollie reported him, Maslin went to London. In the days that followed, he spent his time in a state of increasing unravelling, drinking heavily, and using cocaine and crack cocaine. He was not hiding. He was preparing himself for something. On the morning of Tuesday, the 18th of February 2014, Maslin left London and returned to Gloucester. He went to a pawn shop. He traded in a DVD player for £5. With that money, he went to a nearby shop and bought a 12-inch carving knife for £3. He made no attempt to disguise himself. He covered his face with nothing. He walked through Gloucester city centre in broad daylight, captured on CCTV cameras 7 separate times throughout the day, carrying the knife he had just purchased. This was not a man consumed by a moment of uncontrollable rage. This was a man who had decided. Earlier that same day, Hollie had been at work. She had spoken to her boss, Sean, about her fears. The two of them had agreed that if Maslin showed up, Sean would go to the back and call 999 immediately. Hollie, would not make a scene. They had a plan. At approximately 5:47 in the evening, with just 2 customers remaining in the salon, Asher Maslin walked through the door. Colleagues saw him immediately. Sean moved discreetly to the back and dialed 999. Police were on their way, but within seconds, Maslin had already crossed the salon floor. He grabbed Hollie by her left arm. He said something under his breath, and then he stabbed her in the neck, then the head, then the chest. 14 times, colleagues screamed. Customers tried to intervene. People hid. People ran. Maslin warned them all off and continued his attack until it was finished. Then he walked out of the salon calmly, as if nothing had happened. Her colleagues stayed with her. Sean was still on the phone to the emergency services. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They loaded Hollie into an ambulance and rushed her and got to Gloucestershire Royal Hospital. At 6:51 in the evening, Hollie Gazzard was pronounced dead. She was 20 years old. She had been stabbed 14 times in her neck, head, chest, and torso. That evening, 2 police officers knocked on the door of the Gazzard family home. Her father, Nick, had known something was wrong all day. He has never spoken about the exact moment he found out without breaking. Because Maslin had previously threatened to attack Hollie's family, the Gazzards were moved from their home under armed police protection that same night. On the morning of the 19th of February, less than 8 hours after killing Hollie, Asher Maslin was arrested at a friend's house in Gloucester. He had changed his clothes. He had discarded the knife at a nearby building site. And he had answered every question the police put to him with 2 words: no comment. On the 6th of June 2014, Asher Maslin appeared at Bristol Crown Court and pleaded guilty to the murder of Hollie Gazzard. On the 16th of July 2014, he was sentenced at Gloucester Crown Court by Mr. Justice Tier. The judge used one word to describe what Maslin had done: merciless. He handed down a mandatory life sentence with a minimum term of 24 years before Maslin could be considered for parole. As Maslin was led from the dock, he turned toward his weeping family and mouthed one word: sorry. He later attempted to appeal the 24-year minimum, arguing it should be reduced to 22. In December 2014, the Court of Appeal dismissed his challenge. The Lord Chief Justice, Lord Thomas, stated plainly that the sentence properly reflected the serious culpability of the appellant and the brutal and premeditated nature of the killing. The sentence stood. The IPCC investigation into Gloucestershire Constabulary's handling of Hollie's case was unsparing. It found that in the 6 years before the murder, Maslin had been arrested 23 times and involved in at least 24 violent incidents. Those incidents involved Hollie, 2 former partners, and his own mother. One former partner had contacted police 12 times about his behaviour. His mother had called police on 3 separate occasions. Police had CCTV footage of Maslin strangling Hollie in Gloucester city centre, one of the most significant predictors of lethal domestic escalation, and had not acted on it sufficiently. The officer who took Hollie's statement had received no specific domestic abuse or stalking training. The call handler failed to record multiple important disclosures Hollie made during her report. When officers were given alternative addresses to find Maslin, after failing to find him at his mother's, they did not visit them, and the conclusion of the IPCC was direct. At the time, they ought to have known that Hollie was at risk, and reasonable steps should have been taken to protect her. Gloucestershire Constabulary had already been flagged by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary for concerns about its handling of domestic abuse cases before Hollie's death. The warning had come too late. Nick Gazzard has spoken publicly about the IPCC findings with the kind of measured, contained fury that only a grieving parent can sustain over years. His argument was simple. If any one agency had access to the full picture, the pattern was clear. The predictability of lethal violence was visible to anyone trained to see it. Hollie was not the victim of an invisible threat. She was the victim of a documented one. In the weeks after Hollie's funeral, her father, Nick, faced a choice. He could have stayed private. He could have kept the grief behind closed doors. Nobody would have blamed him. Instead, he fought. Nick, Mandy, and Chloe Gazzard founded the Hollie Gazzard Trust. Their mission was not to memorialise, it was to intervene. The trust went into schools, colleges, universities, workplaces, police forces, and community organizations. They used Hollie's story, her laugh, her talent, her ambition, and the way she died to teach young people how to recognize warning signs before they become dangerous patterns. Nick Gazzard has said publicly that teachers tell him the workshops are saving lives. Students who learn to identify coercive control in a classroom are students who might leave a relationship earlier, call for help sooner, or believe a friend when she says she is afraid. The trust also tackled the workplace dimension directly. Hollie was not killed at home, she was killed at work. Her colleagues, her clients, and her boss were all part of that final story. The trust now runs workplace training programs built on a single principle. Abuse does not stop at the front door of a salon. Employers have a duty of care to staff who may be followed, threatened, or harmed by someone who knows exactly where they will be on a Tuesday evening at 5:47. And then there is Hollie Guard. Hollie Guard is a personal safety app created in Hollie's name. It allows users to activate an alert when they feel unsafe, sharing their location, recording audio and video, and notifying emergency contacts instantly. By the 10th anniversary of Hollie's murder in February 2024, the app had more than 500,000 downloads. Data recorded by the app has been submitted as evidence in criminal investigations. 500,000 people carrying Hollie's name in their pocket as a shield. The case also prompted lasting change in how coercive control is understood and prosecuted in the UK. By 2015, legislation had been passed making coercive and controlling behaviour in an intimate relationship a specific criminal offence, something that did not exist in its current form when Hollie was alive. Her case was part of the national conversation that forced that change into law. In 2024, marking 10 years since Hollie's death, a remembrance service was held at Gloucester Cathedral. Nick Gazzard, now the holder of an honorary fellowship from the University of Gloucestershire for his work, spoke about what a decade of fighting in his daughter's name had meant. He said the trust has raised over £2 million, has delivered training internationally, has influenced government policy, has completed 7 documentaries, has had meetings with ministers, has changed how police forces across the country approach domestic abuse cases. And he said there is still so much more to do, because the pattern that killed Hollie Gazzard did not die with her. It is still happening, in living rooms and restaurants and car parks and workplaces, in every city and every town. The constant contact, the isolation, the escalation, the moment of final rejection that a certain kind of man cannot accept. Hollie Gazzard deserved to live. She deserved her salon, her clients, her ginger hair in whatever colour she chose that week. She deserved her father watching her succeed. She deserved her sister by her side. She deserved every ordinary Tuesday evening for the rest of her life. She was failed by a system that had the information it needed and did not act on it. And she was honoured by a family that refused to let that failure define her story. Hollie Gazzard was 20 years old. She was a hairdresser, a daughter, a sister, a Manchester United supporter who went to Old Trafford with her dad. She was killed because she was brave enough to leave, and because of her bravery, and because of her family's refusal to stay silent, her name now belongs to something that protects people. That is not a small thing. That is everything. If you made it to the end of this story, if you sat with Hollie through all of it, then you already know why this channel exists. Because these stories do not stay in the news for long. A verdict is delivered, a courtroom empties, and the families are left carrying something that never gets lighter. The least we can do is make sure the names don't disappear. If you believe that, subscribe. Every case we cover completely. Not just the crime, the person, the life, the warning signs, the systems that failed, the families that refused to give up. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and share this with one person who needs to hear Hollie's name, because she was not a domestic violence statistic. She was not a police failure report. She was not a legal case study. She was Hollie, and she deserved so much better.